In the news tonight, Iraqi forces retake an area west of Ramadi as they press their operation that aims to seal off Daesh terrorists who captured the city 2 weeks ago. The 4th International Medical Tourism Conference convenes in Amman with the participation of 300 professionals from 28 countries. And U.S. President Barack Obama warns that surveillance powers used to prevent attacks on Americans could lapse at midnight tomorrow unless a group of senators stop standing in the way of reform legislation. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details, and we begin with Iraq, where Iraqi forces retook an area west of Ramadi today as they press their operation that aims to seal off Daesh terrorists who captured the city 2 weeks ago. Military officials said the Iraqi army and the Hashd al-Sha'bi militiamen liberated the Anbar traffic police building west of Ramadi after a fierce fight, forcing Daesh to withdraw from the building, which they had used as a base. Security forces are tightening their stronghold on Ramadi, according to Iraqi commanders, and ordnance disposal teams have begun removing roadside bombs and checking buildings for booby traps in reconquered positions on the outskirts of the city. Daesh seized Ramadi on May 17, using an unprecedented wave of suicide car bomb attacks to force a retreat from the forces. After the fall of Ramadi, the United States announced it was sending 2,000 Swedish-developed 84 unguided anti-tank weapons to help the Iraqi forces counter the threat of car and truck bombs. In Syria, at least 60 people were killed in a raid by the Syrian Air Force in the northern town of Al-Bab, held by Daesh. The strike used barrel bombs, steel drums full of shrapnel and explosives. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, 10 others were wounded in the attack on the town, which has been the focus of several heavy bombardments by the Syrian military in recent months. A second Syrian raid in a rebel-held part of Aleppo city killed at least 12 people. State news agency Sana, citing military sources, said the armed forces have targeted Daesh in Aleppo's eastern countryside. Elsewhere and in the northeast of the country, there were clashes between pro-government forces and Daesh terrorists. The clashes to the south and southeast of Hasaka city occurred after Al-Qaeda yesterday planted a bomb on the edge of the city. The Syrian news agency said the military has foiled an attack on Hasaka and that it has been targeting Daesh in the countryside with the help of Kurdish YPG militia. And in Palmyra, Daesh terrorist group blew up a major prison complex in the central Syrian city. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the prison was empty at the time of the detonation. The sprawling complex is not located among the city's ancient ruins, where Syrian officials fear could be destroyed by the terrorists. The observatory also said that Daesh have shot to death around 20 men in the city's ancient amphitheater, accusing them of being pro-government. Meanwhile, U.S.-led forces targeted Daesh terrorists with 22 airstrikes in Iraq and Syria since yesterday. 16 strikes in Iraq were spread throughout the country, hitting targets near the capital Baghdad, Biji, Fallujah, Hit, Kirkuk, Mosul, Ramadi, Sinjar and Tal Afar. While in Syria, 4 of the 6 strikes were concentrated near Al-Hasaka, hitting Daesh tactical units and destroying positions and artillery. Other strikes were conducted near Deir ez-Zor and Kobani. A new round of talks on Iran's nuclear program opened in Switzerland today to resolve remaining issues in a tentative framework for a nuclear pact reached between the parties early last month. Iran, the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Russia and China reached a tentative agreement on April 2nd, but several issues remain unresolved and they have a self-imposed June 30 deadline to arrive at a comprehensive agreement. Issues holding up a breakthrough agreement include the pace of easing Western sanctions imposed on Iran over its nuclear activity and the extent of monitoring and verification measures to ensure Tehran could not pursue a nuclear weapons program. France warned last Wednesday it would block a final breakthrough deal unless Tehran provided UN nuclear inspectors access to all installations, including military bases. But Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, on arriving in Geneva for the talks, said Iran would resist such a move.
The issue of interviews with nuclear scientists is generally off the table, as well as the inspection of military sites. But in the framework of the processes that are required by the additional protocol, we are still negotiating. There hasn't been an agreement, and there isn't an agreement yet, and talks are continuing. How the additional protocol would be implemented is still a matter of disagreement, and we are still talking about it.
Here at home, the 4th International Conference on Medical Tourism convened in Amman today with the participation of 300 Arab and foreign experts and professionals from 28 countries. Deputizing for Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour, Minister of Health Al Hiyasat, opened the two-day conference organized by the USAID Jordan Competitiveness Program, the Private Hospitals Association, and Al Hikma Pharmaceuticals, with support from the Ministry of Health. Jordan last year came first internationally as a medical tourism destination, and convening the conference in Amman sheds light on the kingdom as a niche market blessed with security, qualified professional and human resources, state-of-the-art medical centers, and warm hospitality. The meeting aims to exchange knowledge on how to adopt a holistic approach to medical tourism and promote public-private partnership, as well as the role of governments in regulating the industry to ensure accountability against medical error. 992 migrants were rescued at sea by an Italian Navy vessel and transported to the southern Sicilian port of Pozzallo. Over 4,200 people have been saved from fishing boats and rubber dinghies over the past 24 hours in 22 operations involving ships from nations including Italy, Ireland, Germany, Belgium, and Britain. Yesterday, 17 bodies were found off boats off Libya. Migrants escaping war and poverty in Africa and the Middle East this year have been pouring into Italy, which has been bearing the brunt of Mediterranean rescue operations. Plans by the European Union to disperse 40,000 migrants from Italy and Greece to other countries was met with resistance this week, with Britain saying it would not participate and some Eastern countries calling for a voluntary scheme. Russia has imposed a travel ban on 89 European politicians and military leaders. The Russian Foreign Ministry said it has prepared a list of people banned from entry and handed it to a European Union delegation in Moscow this week. The list includes outspoken critics of Russia as well as security officials. In recent months, Russia has denied entry to a number of EU politicians based on their inclusion on a confidential stop list. Asked about the list while on a visit to Ukraine, German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier said it would hamper peace efforts.
I can only say that, apart from the fact that I don't find it wise to declare such travel bans, at the very least, those concerned should have been informed about the reservations against them, or at least those lists should be made public. At a time when we are trying to defuse a persistent and dangerous conflict in the middle of Europe, this does not contribute towards that.
U.S. President Barack Obama warned that surveillance powers used to prevent attacks on Americans could lapse at midnight on Sunday unless a handful of senators stop standing in the way of reform legislation. In his weekly address, Obama urged lawmakers to put politics aside and act swiftly on a bill passed by the House of Representatives that would renew certain powers and reform the bulk collection of telephone data. The Section 215 of National Security Agency law, to be amended if Senate gives approval, is used to justify the NSA's collection of billions of Americans' telephone call records. Obama said he has a great responsibility towards U.S. citizens' security, in addition to his administrative duty to fight terrorism, and every means to achieve these two goals will be used.
So what's the problem? We need to use every effective tool at our disposal, both to defend our security and to protect the freedoms and civil liberties enshrined in our Constitution. But tomorrow, Sunday at midnight, some important tools we use against terrorists will expire. That's because Congress has not renewed them, and because legislation that would The USA Freedom Act is stuck in the Senate. I want to be very clear about what this means. A majority of the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, have voted to move it forward. So what's the problem? A small group of senators is standing in the way.
Parts of Texas hammered by severe weather are now officially declared disaster areas after U.S. President Barack Obama late yesterday signed a disaster declaration to free funds for rebuilding. 21 people have been killed in massive flooding over the past 2 days, as some areas saw up to 17 centimeters of rain. Near Dallas yesterday, thousands of cars were trapped for about 6 hours on a freeway blocked by floodwaters after 2 days of rain turned streets into rivers, ripped homes off their foundations, and swept over thousands of vehicles. And more storms are forecast for Texas over the weekend. Severe weather is also affecting the nearby state of Oklahoma. Performers from the Underground Opera Company treated their audience to a musical experience unlike many others. With Mother Nature providing near-perfect acoustics, the adventurous performers sang their hearts out in Rockhampton's Capricorn Caves in Queensland, Australia. With no microphones, the singers' soaring vocals filled the caves, crevices, and caverns of the subterranean theatre, resulting in a goosebump-filled experience. When it's not being used as a spectacular concert hall, Cathedral Cave is a popular venue for weddings. The caves were discovered in 1882 and have been a popular tourist attraction ever since.
The closest natural thing you would get to a very, very well built and designed medieval cathedral. Modern theatres no longer have much in the way of natural acoustic anyway. Also because of the intimacy and the beauty of the surroundings, it allows itself for a lot of theatre that you wouldn't expect.
The Belgian town of Waterloo finalized preparations for an exhibition of Lego models depicting various milestones in the life of Napoleon Bonaparte as the city is about to commemorate the bicentenary of the battle. The display features the battle headquarters of Napoleon and his British nemesis, the Duke of Wellington, as well as the Lion's Mound, a monument commemorating the battle. Dominating the exhibition hall is a model of Napoleon's last resting place made out of 274,000 plastic pieces. More than 20 people, modelers and builders, worked on the Waterloo exhibition using around 1 million building blocks and thousands of hours of work. FIFA President Sepp Blatter came out fighting today as he began his 5th term in charge of soccer's governing body. At a news conference in Zurich, Blatter implied that the United States timed the announcement of a major corruption probe to try to scupper his re-election bid. He criticized U.S. authorities for how they have handled their investigation.
Newly re-elected FIFA President Sepp Blatter came out fighting on Saturday. He told reporters in Zurich he does not fear arrest. This just days after U.S. authorities charged other top FIFA figures and sports executives with corruption and bribery.
Are you concerned at some stage you might be arrested?
Arrested for what? Next question.
Blatter won a 5th term on Friday after his only challenger swiftly conceded defeat in an election overshadowed by allegations of rampant corruption at FIFA amounting to over $100 million.
This is a problem I do not enter, I have just said, and we will not go further if this is an investigation on that. The only thing I can say that I have no $10 million.
Ahead of a soccer match in Sydney, Australian fans showed heated reactions to Blatter's win. Some say Blatter should resign. Others want him fired.
Get him out, get someone new in, make the game better.
The FIFA president promises more transparency going forward, even as he remains defiant.
We will be more communicative in the future.
Blatter now faces the tough task of restoring public faith in one of the world's most powerful sports bodies.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Blatter also criticized UEFA, whose president Michel Platini has called for his resignation, saying it was not setting a good example to other soccer federations. Platini raised the possibility of Europe boycotting the World Cup tournament. FIFA is now tainted by allegations of graft and deeply divided over Blatter's leadership. His vice chairman, David Gill, did not take up his post on FIFA's executive committee today in protest at Blatter's re-election.
We don't deal with him. We don't need him. We don't need FIFA. We'll play in their tournaments. We don't intend to bid for any of to host any tournament while Blatter is still there. We don't even need to have a relationship with him.
And in almost 15 minutes, Barcelona faced Athletic Bilbao in the Copa del Rey final. Barca, who won their 5th La Liga title in 7 years, now face Bilbao before the Champions League final against Juventus. Bilbao finished the season in 7th place in La Liga, and this is the club's 3rd Copa del Rey final in 7 years. And finally, a quick look at the weather. It remains cool for the rest of tonight with northwesterly moderate to fresh winds. Tomorrow, a slight rise in temperature is expected with a high of 26 in Amman, still below seasonal average with partly cloudy skies and northwesterly moderate winds. The Gulf of Aqaba can expect relatively hot conditions during the day, while winds will be northerly moderate and the seas calm. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. Iraqi forces retake an area west of Ramadi as they press their operation that aims to seal off Daesh terrorists who captured the city 2 weeks ago. The 4th International Medical Tourism Conference convenes in Amman with the participation of 300 professionals from 28 countries. And U.S. President Barack Obama warns that surveillance powers used to prevent attacks on Americans could lapse at midnight tomorrow unless a group of senators stop standing in the way of reform legislation. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Tuqan. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.